Light that the earth is mine. Burn bright, let the ember shine. You know I'm gonna get it every time. Champion, wearing the crown. I can see my name in lights. Spark from the heart and it shines so bright. Yeah, let the whole world know. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Hey guys, before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to let you know it is brought to you by Trucker Tools. It is undeniable that digital technology has changed the transportation industry. However, not all digital technologies deliver the same results. If you are a freight broker or a 3PL who wants to take your business to the next level, you have to make thoughtful technology choices to maximize the return on your investment. And that starts with implementing a true digital platform, and not just a handful of digital tools that may or may not integrate. A true digital platform increases efficiency and effectiveness, which creates a systematic alignment between internal teams and generates actionable insights that help you make better business decisions. True digital platforms also reduce costs and provide new opportunities to grow your business without increasing your employee headcount. Trucker Tools' digital platform goes beyond other competing technologies by helping our brokerage partners improve operations by utilizing machine learning and automation to continuously enhance performance by putting the right load in front of the right carrier, which strengthens carrier relationships and will lead to exceeding shipper visibility benchmarks. More importantly, Trucker Tools' digital platform will free up time on everything from tracking loads to getting carriers paid more swiftly, which gives every member of your team more hours to spend on revenue-producing activities. To learn more, visit www.truckertools.com or email them direct, sales@truckertools.com. Again, that is www.truckertools.com or email them direct, sales@truckertools.com. Do me a favor, let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. Hey guys, before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to let you know it is brought to you by Port TMS. Port is founded and designed by transportation veterans to provide 3PLs and freight brokers with an affordable and all-inclusive TMS solution. Your TMS choice is one of the single most important decisions you can make for your business, and you need one that is already forward-thinking through integration capabilities and one that is willing to grow with you and not hold your business back. Integrations and workflow are key to save your team time and energy so they can focus on building more profitable and sustainable relationships with your customers. Port TMS creates a seamless and efficient shipping cycle through connecting shippers, carriers, operations staff, and management in one easy-to-use web-based platform. If you are ready to speak with a team of seasoned transportation professionals that are ready to help you level up your business, reach out to Port Direct at www.porttms.com or email them support@porttms.com. Again, that is www.porttms.com or email them direct, support@porttms.com. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Coffee with the Freight Coach. My name is Chris Jolly. I am your host, and I am the Freight Coach. Before we jump into today's episode, as always, thank you guys so much for coming back and supporting this show. And I can't thank you guys enough for everything that you guys do, the messages that you guys are shooting me. It means the world, and I appreciate it very, very much. If this is your first time listening, welcome. This is a real side of freight. This industry is so much more vast than just one facet of it. There's so many different sides of it. There's so many different components to this industry that make everything tick. And in my opinion, the supply chain, the transportation industry is the most important industry in this entire nation. And, that's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the real side of freight. It's brought to you by individuals who are in this industry day in and day out. There's no theory here. This is brought to you by people with real experience in this space. So with that being said, I got one quick favor to ask before we jump in. I need you guys to subscribe for me. Hit pause, back up, subscribe, comment, like, share it out there for me. This growth has been because of you. And the more that we do that, the better the content's going to get. I promise you guys that. So with that being said, I got another consultant on here with you guys today. We're not out here talking about, trying to sell you anything. We're here just to bring value to who his firm represents, and the people that, like, the life that I lived as a broker for a long time, we're all intertwined. So with that being said, I have Mr. Mike Mulqueen here with JBF Consulting. So Mike, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, Chris, great to be here.
So how did you start out in this industry, or have you really just been on the consulting side for, because like when we initially talked, you've been in this industry for what, 25, 30 years at this point?
You just like to talk about how old I am.
Nah, come on.
Yeah. So I started out in the really in the logistics software space.
Mm-hmm.
So my first role was with a company called Roadnet Technologies, which was a subsidiary of UPS. And that group was really focused around the traveling salesman problem, right? It was a routing and scheduling application. This is 1989, right? So remember, for the older listeners,
I was 3, so
yeah, jerk. But for a PC-based application that was really designed to help. It was primarily for wholesale distributors in that last mile piece. Think of like a Cisco Foods. Think of a beer distributor that has 25 trucks that are servicing, 200 bars and restaurants and things like that, right? So, again, the very beginning stages of when we started using operations research and heuristics and that type of mathematical logic to help come up with optimal route planning. Yeah. So I started back in '89. I moved over to another company called Manugistics, which is now part of a company called Blue Yonder, where it was more around contract freight, right? So I was in the TMS group, product manager of the TMS application there, where our goal, our clients were a lot of big CPG companies, Hershey, Nestle, Unilever, those type of guys, right? As well as some very big retailers. And most of their freight was run by contract, right? So it was contract truckload. And the big things there we were trying to do was to do optimized planning, creating multi-stop truckloads, making a determination, should I flow things through a cross-dock network or should I ship it direct? Should I use LTL? Should I use truckload? Should I use intermodal? The modal selection problems, all those types of things. So my background has been primarily in software. And then also I was with Accenture for a while where I worked with my primary customer is the US Postal Service, which again, people don't realize. People see the little LLVs running around, but people don't realize that they're spending billions of dollars on contract freight as well, right? Mm-hmm. So working closely with them. And I did put my toe into industry and I worked at a company called C&S Wholesale Grocers for a little bit as Director of Transportation Systems there back in 2006. But that was too hard. Software and consulting, I like to, it's more suited to my personality, I think.
No, absolutely. I agree, man. Like I loved brokering freight, I love being in the trenches for a long time, but I just got to a point where I'm like, what else do I have to prove? Like it's not that brokerage is easy by any means. It just wasn't bringing me that same challenge that it did when I once first started in this space. And, that's when I, last year when I, like initially I wanted to go out and sell on the trucking company side because I had no experience on the asset side. And I'm like, my master plan at the time was, hell, I've been a broker for about 10 years. I'll do that for about 5. And, I'll make a solid senior leadership play somewhere if I got, experience on both sides of the fence. And then, the greatest gift ever happened to me. And that's where I was out of a job. I had no prospects because nobody was hiring at that time in March of 2020. And it really forced me to look inward at what I really wanted to do with my life. And, I've been saying I wanted to be my own boss and do my own thing for a very long time. And this was that opportunity. So that's where, I just really went for it. And fortunately, through a lot of hard work, it's working. And, like I'm not in the clear or anything like that, but I finally feel like that drive and that passion that I once did when I first started in freight, where it's like, this is a whole new thing. This is a whole new challenge for me to build this out. And that's what I love the most about it is it's like, I almost love the uncertainty of it all more than I do of like, don't get me wrong. I respect that paycheck a hell of a lot more now that I would get every 2 weeks. But I almost love the uncertainty of everything and kind of seeing like when you close a deal and you're like, holy shit, this came out of nowhere, like, how did I do this? And then here we are. Yeah. So
a little dopamine hit there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned, transportation, for the novice and not your listeners. And by the way, we love what you guys do, right?
Thank you.
We love to have sophisticated people that we can talk to and sell to, because if too many people, the novice out there just simplifies the problem. People put stuff on a truck and they deliver it, right? It's a big simplification of the problem. In transportation, just in the US, right? And again, we have global clients, right? But just in the US, we're spending close to $1 trillion a year on transportation, $800 billion a year just on truckload transportation between truckload and fleet, right? So this is a huge problem. And the problems for our shippers, they're broken down into multiple components, from procuring contract rates to inbound transportation. We have interfacility, we have outbound, we have last mile, we have parcel, we have visibility plays that we need to be able to deal with. I need to be able to pay my carriers appropriately. I need to be able to audit those invoices. there are all of these little sub processes
Yeah.
that you need to have nailed down if you're going to be a successful shipper. And the penalty right now, Chris, for being an unsuccessful shipper is almost now an existential threat to the business. It used to be, there wasn't that huge of a delta between a mediocre shipper and a really good shipper. Now there is.
Yeah.
Right. So
massive. And I think that's where, that's why I love technology the most, of why, with the amount of technology that's coming into this space, like it's only going to get more refined, and it only makes the industry better. Like it's not here to replace anything. I'm just such a firm believer, Mike, that if you're a good employee or you're a good company, technology is going to blow you into the stratosphere. It's going to level you up to levels that you never thought were achievable. If you're bad, it will expose you. And I think that's why so many people are kind of pushing back against a lot of what's coming in, is because they're like, how do I cover my tracks anymore? Let's be real. Yeah. We've all worked with people who do minimal, who try and skate by, and then something new comes in, it shakes them up and it exposes them. And you can't skate by. It's like, again, as somebody who worked for companies for a long time, I respect that paycheck a lot more now than I ever did when I was receiving it. And now as a business owner and somebody who's going through and trying to build it up, like I want to hire the best people. I want to hire the people who want to work and grow with me and not skate by. Like we all know the people who are just mediocre, they just try and fly under the radar. That doesn't do anybody any good, themselves in particular. You do not lead a successful life by doing less, in my opinion.
Yeah. And like, as you're implying, the people that can adopt to technology, and not technology for the sake of technology, but certainly, but what we coach our clients on is there are first order problems that need to be solved, right? So there's the proliferation of technology players out there, Chris, right now has just exploded. And it's primarily because of VC money, right? Yeah. We are seeing these unbelievable valuations coming out of Silicon Valley. You're seeing, companies with $50 million of revenue being valued at over $1 billion, right? So these just unbelievable multiples. And this is the hard part, right? So as you're a shipper, or as you're a broker, or as you're a carrier, being able to figure out what's real and what's not real. Because I guarantee you, of all of these different providers out there, right? All these different tech companies out there right now, vast majority are losing money, right? And are not going to be around in 5 years. It's correct. Finding those ones that are going to be those long-term partners and that are really solving a problem that our shipper community has, right? Those are the guys, or carrier, or whatever the community that we're dealing with. In my case, it's typically shippers. But the ability to solve those problems effectively and in a manner that's differentiating.
Yes.
Those are the key things that we're really looking for, because again, there is just a lot of hype out there right now. And that the Silicon Valley mentality of fake it till you make it is prevalent. And we see it all the time. We see misleading statements. We see people claiming to be able to do things that they can't really do, talking about vision as if it's reality. And that's the kind of the cons. The pros of the space, though, are there's just so much innovation going on now. You've got a bunch of really, really smart people. And for the first time, you got the money guys that are really caring about supply chain and logistics. Yeah. And we didn't see that, in 2010, we didn't see that, right? I saw a McKinsey report, Chris, it was showing how much VC money had flowed into logistics tech in the last, it was from 2014 to 2020. And it was a 17x increase of VC money flowing in. Jesus. So all of these ideas, and the cool thing with the VC money is they subsidize shippers, carriers, and brokers, because the VCs know that these guys are just trying to gain market share. So they're willing to sell product for less expensive than truly costing them, which is a benefit to the ecosystem of shippers, carriers, brokers. But again, that's unsustainable, right? At some point in time, the partner that you go with from a tech perspective needs to have a profitable entity. And definitely. And that's the scary part. Yeah.
No, for sure. Cause we're coming up now. I think it was like 2017 was when that's when it's really started to gain traction from an outside investment perspective. And, 18, 19 rolled along. And I mean, we're coming up. I'm not a stock expert. I'm not a venture capitalist expert at all, but I've read a couple of books, so I know how they work. But they need to make money. And it's generally that 5-year mark is where hey, we got to turn a profit. And that's kind of where a lot of it is coming to head here in the next 12 to 18 months, is there's going to be a lot of that early adoption that is going to be, you're going to start seeing some of these companies fall off. I'm not advocating for it, but the reality
it's a reality.
You need to make money. Otherwise you don't have a business. And I think that a lot of what's coming in, but like, again, there's going to be companies that are going to fall off. There's plenty of freight brokerages and trucking companies who were big at one time that are now irrelevant. And there's now the next wave. That is just how a free market society works. There's very few companies that have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and okay, obviously we've only been a country for a little over 200, but that's irrelevant to the point right there. But you know what I'm saying though? Like, there's very few companies that have been around since the 1800s that are still in existence today. Yeah. And this is all progressing us forward though, because I'm a massive proponent of technology, because like I see a lot of stuff that's coming out there. I talk to a lot of different people. I'm really excited for the one that hits, because if we're not too far away from the one or two platforms that are going to hit, and they're going to be massive, and people are going to be like, I never saw it coming. It's like, no, they're there, and they're very smart in what they're doing and their approach to it and everything. And I really get behind the tech companies that have a transportation background, like those people that grew up in the industry, they saw a problem and then they created technology for it, and they're coming up in it. I'm really excited for them, because that's the biggest differentiating factor, in my opinion, between a lot of these companies who are outsiders coming in, trying to shake up the industry, that literally don't even know what a fucking drive-in is, and they're out here trying to like revitalize everything. But then you have that core group of individuals who grew up in this industry. They saw a problem. They know the intangibles of this industry, and they're going to be able to execute upon that and grow it. And they're the ones who I have a aching suspicion are going to be the big players here in the next probably 24 months.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Chris. There's a great chart that I always go back to, right? And it's a chart that talks. It's an interesting chart. I know this isn't a visual, but it shows what you think you know versus what you truly know, right? And it's based on the Y. The vertical axis is what you think you know, and the x-axis is time. And it's interesting because people that are naive, and the naivete is actually can be valuable, right? You're coming in without any kind of preconceived notions. Yeah. But once you learn more, all of a sudden you realize how much you don't know. Mm-hmm. And the organizations and there are a lot of disruptors out there that are coming in with 25, 27-year-old brilliant people coming out. They dropped out of Stanford or whatever, right? Yeah. So and they're brilliant people, but they don't know what they don't know. And they do come in with a different perspective, but I think that they oftentimes oversimplify the problem. People will look at total number of empty miles. Right. Oh, across the U.S., truckload carriers are averaging 15% empty miles. Private fleets are 30% empty miles. They do some basic math with a calculator, and they say if we can reduce that by 1%, it's that simplistic, right? Without really truly understanding what's involved in making the substantial changes. But the companies that I like include some of the legacy companies that you don't think about, right? JB Hunt with their 360 platform, right? C.H. Robinson's putting $1 billion of R&D in, and they're coming in with domain.
Correct.
These companies, people, I oftentimes people have underestimated the technical capabilities of some of these large truckload shippers, some of the large, LTL shippers, the brokerage guys, in terms of dynamic pricing, things that, and there's a bunch of companies out there now that are doing interesting things with dynamic pricing.
Yeah. No,
right?
I mean,
but this is where Hunt and Schneider and these other very large Swift, these organizations have been there for a while. They know, and now they're investing a lot. And by the way, financially, they're doing pretty darn well. Yeah. Right. Especially the asset-based guys. Right. So it is a great time. You just have to pick and choose very wisely who you're actually going to go and partner with from a tech perspective. Yeah.
And that's the thing is, it's like, I think a lot of companies are, like they're investing in technology, but it's like you as like a trucking company or a brokerage, that, because let's be honest, 90% plus of this industry, probably 93% of this industry is small business, technically on paper. Yep. You need to look at it from a tech perspective. How forward thinking are they? Are they integrated already with companies, or are you going to get slapped with a fee every time you got to go out there and do it? And, it's like, and then you're looking at it from like, and I'm going to tie this into, cause you guys primarily work with shippers. You guys primarily work on the supply chain side. And my whole thing is it's like, if you're going to a shipper, if I'm going into a Kraft Heinz, or if I'm going into one of these companies, the value add has to be deeper than, oh, we have access to trucks. It's like, how do you bring value to the table to them? So it's like, what you need to, like, to me, a TMS is the lifeblood of your organization, and it will make and break you as a broker or a carrier if you choose the wrong partner. And, because it's like, if you're out there and you're looking to get EDI with, say a Kraft Heinz, or, remove that from anybody. Mm-hmm. Please, Kraft Heinz, don't send me any letter in the mail. But I just think like they're going to look at that as, it's like, okay, now it's like, all right, I need EDI. Okay, perfect. Yeah, we can get you EDI, but it's going to cost you $5,000 a month to do it. And you're like, whoa, what? So it's like there's all these back, channel fees that come across with it. And these are the conversations you need to be having with your TMS providers up front when you're vetting them. You need to see what type of integrations they have, because again, I'm not like, you don't want to get to the bottom of the ninth with a massive shipper, and then they're like, oh, that's who you use for your TMS. Yeah, our TMS doesn't talk to them. We're not going to use you. And you just invested 6 months of prospecting and everything else. So it's like, these are the things you need to bring to the table. Yeah.
And that is one of the biggest changes that we're seeing from a tech perspective, regardless of the problem that they're solving. None of these technology platforms, no TMS especially, right, is a standalone application. And the interoperability between that TMS system and your asset-based providers, your brokers, your 3PLs that are running your DCs, your ERP platforms that you have internally, your suppliers, all of a sudden now this interoperability, which has for a long time been managed by EDI, and we still see it. It's prevalent everywhere. Yeah. People are always saying EDI is dead. It ain't dead. We are doing 204 mapping, 214 mapping, 990 mapping, 210 mapping constantly, right? And then forget about it if you have an international guy that's doing ocean, air, rail, completely different. EDI is alive and well. The death of it has been talked about for 20 years. It's still there. But that interoperability, I mean, the thing with EDI is it is batch in nature. It is not real time, right? And we were starting to see interesting technology plays that are facilitating now those same types of transactions, those same types of business objects in a much more real time environment, an API type of environment. But you're spot on in terms of, you can't just look at all the bells and whistles and the screens for a TMS application and say, we really like this, without understanding the connectivity and that interoperability that you need.
And that's, it's a great point, because again, there's a lot of noise that is being thrown out there right now. And I think like being able to vet some of these companies by asking simple questions like that, that's going to save you a lot of time and energy and stress at the end of the day. Because as a small business owner myself, you don't want to get to the point where you're told that, oh, we don't do that. And then it holds you back from a company. And then you're locked in for a 2-year contract and you're screwed. You're essentially being told you're using us, but we're not going to work with you at that point. Or if we do, it's going to cost you $50,000 or some BS number like that. So like, what is from a perspective of your clients, what is something that is lacking on the brokerage and trucking company side? Like, what's something that they're not bringing to the table that's like a consensus overall? Like, I don't see why these providers just don't get it.
Oh gosh,
where do we start? No,
we're seeing better. And honestly, I look at it almost like issues with my shippers.
Yeah.
My shippers, and we see this constant interplay from 2018, 19, 20. We've seen this yo-yo back and forth in terms of the markets and who's doing what. And, I put a lot of the blame in terms of supply chain issues on my shippers, and not understanding the economics of a transportation organization.
Yeah.
And it especially comes down to detention, holding up assets at our DCs, understanding the financial model of a carrier, right? How they make money. And I try to coach the guy. You can't hold up a driver for 6 hours to do a live load or an unload, right? So I think for me that, what can my carriers do better? It's the communication. It's the real-time communication between the shippers and the carriers. Mm. We're starting to do a much better job in terms of visibility, but it's probably not where it needs to be. I know that there's the intermediaries like the Forkites and the P44s and the macro points and
trucker tools,
the 10-4s, all those kind of, exactly, that are facilitating that a little bit. But that's expensive. I mean, the amount of money that some of those providers charge exceeds the cost of a TMS for a shipper, based on their pricing models, right? So we don't understand why we need to go through those intermediaries to get basic visibility. I think that's a big issue. I think that like I said, I take a neutral perspective on this, but because I'm working with shippers, I can change shipper operations easier than I can change carrier operations.
Yeah.
So, the ability to do high velocity, focus more on drop trailers at facilities, I think is really, really important. My shippers need to understand the cash flow situation for brokers and for carriers. We can't have 90-day payment terms, things like that.
It's crippling.
These were really prevalent just a few years ago, and now the carriers, I think
they still are. And I think, Mike, that like from a cash flow perspective, right there's outside of I don't obviously know everybody's balance sheet and what their cash flow looks like. There's not a lot of carriers and providers out there that can extend millions of dollars of credit to multiple shippers and then float for 90 to 120 days.
Yeah.
That's just not viable. And I like, in all honesty, I think that's why a lot of these massive enterprise shippers only work with the top 10 so they can float that cash to them. It's not like if you're a smaller broker or trucking company, it's not that they don't want to work with you. You just can't give them the money to operate. And that's just a thing of brokerage. I was, I saw a lot of this at one of my former employers, I was privy to a lot of this information. And nobody ever directly said that, but I know for a fact that there's not a lot of brokers out there that can extend $2.5 to $3 million in credit to 50 shippers.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's surprising you say it's still, because most of my shippers have compressed that time, right? So I had some guys out there that were looking at 90, and they say 90 days, but it's 90 days with the cycle, right? So it's really 115 or 105, right? Yes. So it is, and it goes back to just truly understanding who the business model of your carriers or your transportation service providers. And these aren't multi-billion, aside from, the ones that we can all name, They're not multi-billion-dollar enterprises. So, we I've been talking about everybody talks about shipper choice now. It's become a cliche. And gosh, I'm really worried about the current environment right now because my shippers are pissed. Right. They are very upset. And you can kind of get it. You can put yourself in an asset-based carrier. Most of my shippers are large and it's mostly under contract. Yeah. Right. But is it fair for me to do a contract and then have the world up and hold people to that contract? And I think that where we were typically seeing 90-95% acceptance rates on my primary tender, I'm seeing 60-65%. Yeah. And now I'm having to go out to that spot market and I'm getting destroyed in that spot market. And, I talk with my guys, and we close the door and we talk and we say, what are you thinking? Do we really need to invest in shipper of choice if our carrier community is going to ignore the negotiations that we had, right? And the rates that we put out there. And so I think when this market turns, and it always turns, right? There's going to be hell to pay, not just on the ocean side, or not just on the trucking side, but the ocean is even, it's 10 times worse, right?
For sure.
Any kind of long-term loyalty is gone.
No, definitely. Yeah. But like my whole thing is it's like, I always wondered, because like when the market shifted in the shipper's favor back in my career, then all of a sudden we're forced into a rebid because we can't have you making too much money. Like that's where the fundamental trust in this industry is not there. I just think that there's not a kumbaya scenario where, hey, everybody's making money. And I get it. Like I'm a massive proponent of a free market. I'm a proponent of capitalism. I like making money just like the next individual does. But I hated the fact that we had 100% or, the 90, we were above their threshold, the 98% on time percentage. Our acceptance rate was up there. Everything was up there. And then the market shifts a little bit and then we're forced into a rebid to reduce our rates. Yep. And it's like, well, wait a second here. But then we're expected to hold the line when the market shifts back. Yeah. And then as a broker, my margins go from 12%, which are fucking pitiful compared to other industries. Right. We get compressed from 12 to 8%, and we're supposed to be okay with that. Like that's not like, again, there's no kumbaya. There's like, I get where this all is, but that's a big point of frustration from a lot of trucking companies and brokerages alike. Cause it's like, listen, we're not out here driving, having private jets flying us out between our terminals or anything like that. We're trying to stay afloat, but then our margins are compressed. So it's a vicious cycle, but it's a cycle that I love because I just love playing the game too much,
I think both carriers and shippers think it's a zero sum game. So if I'm going to make any kind of, if it's a shipper market, the shippers are, to your point, they're immediately going out and doing an RFP. Oh, we need to renegotiate that.
Yep.
But they don't see it the same way on the other side.
Of course.
And the thing though that the shippers are looking at though, they're looking at the financials. They're looking at the financials of the trucking companies, and they're saying, "Oh my God, look what these guys just did this last quarter. They are making a killing right now."
But no, for sure. But it's like there's only so many publicly traded companies. They're not looking at again, the 95% of the trucking companies that are on the road have 10 trucks or less. So it's like, are they really banking on that? I don't think a lot of these trucking companies are making as much money as people think.
They're using the big guys as the proxy for the overall market, right?
Course,
so it's just not fair, right?
Yeah, and they have 7 different business divisions that they're reporting on. It's not just truckload of the big 5. They have brokerage, they have international, they have everything under the sun. So yeah, of course their profits are going to be up.
Yeah, dedicated and remote. You're right. So everybody, get it. But I'm just telling you that the shippers are, and Chris, right now on the ocean side, I don't know if you've been watching the financials on the ocean side. It is, and then my guys, they're used to paying $1,500 for an FEU coming from Asia are paying $20,000. Yeah, it is.
Oh, it's robbery. It's a racket, and that was my biggest problem when I was brokering with, the intermodal sector and the LTL sector. It's a racket. They are in control of it. And they're going to charge you what they charge you at the end of the day. Explain this to me, Mike. I moved an intermodal shipment once. They took it upon themselves to deliver it early. They charged me an early delivery fee. I never once asked them to deliver it early. I never once did. They took it upon themselves. And then the company I was working for at the time, the rail had a direct withdrawal from us. So essentially, as soon as that invoice hit, they took their money and that was it. Yeah. So it's like, who had to pay for that? The little guy, the little sales rep out in Reno, Nevada had to pay for that. $800, I still remember. It's been fucking 10 years and I remember that.
And the reason is because there's, a very limited, unlike trucking, right? In the TL space where there's literally 200,000 trucking companies or whatever there is. And you're right. The vast majority of them are very, mom and pop type of businesses where you just don't have that type of leverage. On the intermodal, on the ocean side, it was bad enough when you had 11, 12, 15 different steamships. Yeah. Now they're all part of 3 consortiums.
Correct.
Right. So they have complete pricing control. And that is, my guys are looking at Zim just came out with their financials, Maersk. All these guys are generating more profits in a quarter than they did in the 10 previous years combined.
Yeah. I can't wait to see all these brand new ships coming. I'm just kidding. But no, I completely understand where you're coming from, but it's like, we're at a point though, where it's like, it's just the market that we're in is like a legitimate perfect storm. In my opinion, there's so much that has been thrown at it. And this is, again, an ode to every single company that is involved in the transportation industry. It's gotten dicey, but they haven't been able to break us because that just shows how strong we are as an industry overall. Literally everything that you could think of that could possibly go wrong, in my opinion, has essentially gone wrong over the last 16 to 18 months. Yeah. And we're still here. We're still showing up every single day. Our shelves aren't bare. We're working towards it. Yes, there's a backlog. Yes, there's a lot of shit that's going on, but we're still showing up every day. So that's an ode to every single transportation professional that's out there right now.
Couldn't agree more. And if you watch the press, they like the hyperbole, right? And they're like, the supply chains are broken. Everything is broken. It's terrible. I can, within two minutes of here, I can go get 19 different types of butter.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It is. Things are not broken. You can certainly drive increased efficiency. And I think one thing, Chris, that we're seeing now, this is for many of my shippers, it's more aspirational than putting it into practice. But I think that everybody now is really questioning the whole concept of network-wide bids, annual network-wide bids on the truckload side. Yeah, they just 2018, 19, and 20 and 21 have all been just years where those bids had not even worth the paper they're written on. So now I think, a lot of the organizations, they're trying to be a lot more nimble. The lanes that are working well, don't touch them. Do not go out to bid with these lanes, but then continually monitor the lanes that are not working well, and then put them out when you need to, or at least start having conversations with the primary providers on those lanes. Maybe those lanes just don't work for that carrier anymore.
No, I agree.
Anymore, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of that would be a lot of these larger shippers, they might need to, like, I know this is, and this might be easier said than done. Like, I've never ran an RFP, but I think like with the digitization of where the RFP process is going, I think if anything, again, this is why I'm a massive proponent of technology. I got to give a shout out to Emerge here and what they're doing.
Yes.
Is it's like, that's going to be able to break it down to a regional focus, I think, because if you busted apart every single bid that's out there right now, there's probably a higher than people want to admit percentage of freight that is awarded due to the fact that nobody bid on it, or there's just not a lot of competition, or the people you have invited to do your bid, they all say bid $800 for a 40-mile lane, when there's somebody out there who can do it for $450, but they're not in your bid process. And then they might move 10 of those a day. So it's like, I think that's going to expose it. And again, that's why I'm such a fan of this, is it's like, I think it's going to fix it. It's going to, like, I don't want to say it's going to make it more competitive, because again, I want everybody to make money on this, but there is a vast majority of the lanes that are ran out there right now that are the oh shit price, that our network failed. We got to throw it out there. And now we're paying double of what we normally would if we would maybe expand our network to another 6 to 8 carriers or brokers alike that can provide more competitive pricing on a regional niche basis.
Our shippers, I talk with them about this RFP process. And by the way, the RFP process for a shipper is oftentimes 3-4 months. Yeah. From the time that they're originally going in, they're starting to do their forecasts on lane volumes. They're trying to provide seasonality information to the carriers when they possibly can. Then they go through multiple different iterations and multiple different bids, right? So they'll do a primary bid, and then they'll weed out the stuff that they want to rebid out there and do multiple rounds. Just hugely painful, and it's hugely painful for the shipper, but it's hugely painful for the carriers as well. Yes. And in terms of just the sheer number of carriers that are out there, we're typically see. I may have a core carrier program with my shipper where we have 50 different primary carriers, and we're going to these 3 other carriers, sales guys called me up, so we're going to invite them as well. They have no idea of which carriers, which brokers are operating in which regions, how I can get introduced to high quality carriers, high quality brokers. So essentially, we deal with essentially 90% of the incumbents, unless they have just horrendous service or some other reason why they're not going to participate. Maybe their network isn't aligned with ours anymore, whatever it might be, but it's primarily just a rejiggering of the incumbents, right? Yeah. So, that process is a mess. I like we've talked with the Emerge folks. I like what they're doing. Yeah. The problem with a lot of the procurement tools are they're very heavy. That's why it takes 3 months, right, to populate the data, to get the RFP out. Oftentimes, there's even. I think like this is the good thing, is because I think it's taking such a longer time now because there hasn't been a process implemented in the past. So as we run through a couple of these cycles, it's going to get more and more efficient. We're going to take it down from 3 to probably 15 days here in the next probably 2 years, if not less than that. I'm not a tech person. That's way above my head, but I understand the bare bones basics of it. And I understand the cycles are going to only improve. They have a lot of very intelligent people pulling the strings on this, and they're going to be able to dump all of that data. And then they're going to be like, all right, it took us 3 months. Now we're going to get it down to a month and a half next year because of all of this information we have now. Yeah. I would argue the point that I think that a big network-wide bid is always going to be a long and onerous process, regardless of the technology. I think, though, that the network-wide bid is a fool's errand. I just think that it is just not worth doing anymore. And I would much rather have evergreen contracts in place and then just continue to work with my carriers, right? But find where my network is breaking down. Find where the carriers are, where I'm getting... the primary guy continually decline, or my service isn't where it needs to be, or whatever it might be. And at that point, almost don't go about and have a once annual bid process. Continually evaluate and continually go out and work with the market. If this is truly a market, then how could a carrier be asked to lock in rates for a year?
Yeah.
Right. That doesn't make any sense. Right. So especially, and again, maybe back in 2008, 9, 10, we weren't seeing the volatility, right? We have just seen 3 huge turns. 2018 was fantastic for the carriers. 2019 was a catastrophe for the carriers.
Yeah.
2020, 21 have been good for the carriers, right? So these big swings that, historically they made, the shipper carrier balance was a little bit longer in duration. So maybe that, annual bid was working with just the variability that's coming into play right now and the quick changes in the market. It doesn't make any sense. So that's why we're really talking with our guys about, this and using an emerge type of solution, which is designed to be much more nimble than some of the legacy systems that are out there.
No, definitely. Again, that's what, I'm all about. I'm all about moving this industry forward. Mike, I feel like I could talk to you for like another 4 hours because that we can go over. But man, I appreciate you sharing your perspective and your insight on this, because clearly this is something that you care deeply about. You've been in this industry, since I've been 3 years old. So, but at the end of the day, though, like I appreciate hearing people's perspectives on things, because I think that is one thing that was lacking in our space for a very long time, is it was very siloed. And I know now I can say with confidence that the walls are starting to be torn down in a good way. We're out here working together now, or it's at least starting. At least that's the vibe I get, is people are like, all right, let's collectively fix this together, where, we're not always going to be happy, which is fine. That you're never going to have a kumbaya scenario, but there's some more of a middle ground that we can all be profitable. And you never hear any shipper or any broker or any carrier out there advocating for anybody to go out of business, but it's like, hey, we all want to make money. We're all working. And I think that that's a fair assessment, is we're all working. We all deserve to get a little bit of the pie, in my opinion, anyways.
Yeah. And I think you're spot on. I think the adversarial relationship amongst the trading partners, right? The shipper of choice stuff, of choice, or whatever we want to call it, it needs to become real and not just a talking point, right? And my shippers, we've been really coaching our shippers on truly understanding the inner workings of a carrier, asset-based carrier, or a broker, understanding what drives their business, what makes them successful. It is bad for my shipper community to have their transportation service providers not be successful. And that what's good for me is bad for you, and it's correlated -1, right? That is a horrible mindset. And I think you're right, Chris. I'm optimistic that it is slowly but surely changing.
Absolutely. Mike, how can anybody reach out to you or find out more about what you guys are doing over there at JBF?
Yeah, so probably the best way to go would be JBF-consulting.com website. And actually, we even do 30-minute free phone call assessments just to kind of to walk you through and give you a sense of what's happening from a logistics tech perspective.
Perfect. I'll put that information for you guys in the show notes. Mike, thank you so much for your time and sharing your perspective on this. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you to each and every one of you for tuning into this. I appreciate you guys so much. I'm going to say that till I'm blue in the face, because I truly mean it. This is nothing without the support that you guys show me week in and week out, day in and day out. I mean, it means the world to me. I love you guys, and we'll definitely be talking to you soon.
Right that the earth is mine. Burn bright, let the ember shine. I'm gonna get it every time. Champion, wearing the crown. I can see my name in lights. Spark from the heart and it shines so bright. Yeah, let the whole world know. Let's go, let's go.